my Tabor City home here, and it is end of April, and we are trimming camellia bushes. And I kind of wanted to take you guys along and show you a little bit about how we're doing that. This camellia bush we actually trimmed up last fall, and we trimmed this one. As you can see, there's a lot of new growth on it. We trimmed that one, and we trimmed another one right over here in the yard. We actually trimmed this one, which you can see a lot of new growth on as well. Trimmed those last fall, and one of the reasons why we trimmed them last fall was they just were terrible. They looked diseased, the leaves were falling off of them. It just did not look like a good situation. And one of the things I experienced when I went to go trim them was I went on YouTube and I looked for a video on how to trim camellia bushes. And you know, there's just nothing that really gave a great, in my opinion, tutorial on trimming camellia bushes. So I trimmed those two pretty hard. Generally, when I'm trying something new on a shrub, I just prune it hard, see how it responds. I think it's responded really well. I think it's got a lot of new growth. This camellia bush, as you can see, is very yellow. If you compare that to the camellia beside it, this one here is very yellow. I love this bush. It actually puts out both pink, white, and pink and white flowers. One bush, 3 different kinds of flowers. It's great. As you can see, we have a bird's nest up in it. I don't know that anybody's using it, but I'm not going to try my luck on it. So I left the bush pretty much intact and just kind of trimmed around the outside, trying to get some sunlight on the inside of the bush. Walk right down the yard here, and we have this camellia bush. No bird's nest, but I really do like the shape. It's kind of a goblet shape of bush. And so what I did was I got in there and just trimmed the top out of it. The top was getting kind of lengthy. I really, I wanted to promote new growth for the bush to be fuller and not so much for the bush to be taller. This one here, again, we have a bird's nest in the bush. And so I just kind of tried to trim away some of the outside stuff and see if I could promote some growth in the middle of the bush. That was really my goal there, was just to make a fuller camellia bush. Then we have this one here, and this bush I trimmed about 2 weeks ago, and it was really in bad shape. Same situation as the bushes on the other side of the yard, leaves falling off, everything turning yellow. And as you can see, I mean, the leaves are far darker today than they were when I trimmed it a couple weeks ago. And we have just exploded in new growth all throughout this bush. So, I'm thinking that that's working. And, I'm building a theory that camellias like to be pruned, and sometimes they like to be pruned hard. And so today, I basically took this bush and I kind of just drew a line, and I said I was going to trim everything above that line. And this bush already has some new growth on it, but as you can see, there's some yellowing of the leaves, and the shape is not full. It's kind of all over the place, shooting out. So that basically is how that bush is growing. And we want to promote new growth, and we want healthy bushes. It's great for them to look great, and it's nice that they throw out a ton of flowers, but we want them to be healthy because, a bush like this it's an heirloom bush. I'm sure that Miss Sanders, who planted it years and years and years ago with the forethought that it would be around for a long time to come. And so, I just want to carry on that tradition of having beautiful camellia bushes in the yard. They're right in the month of March. They are absolutely phenomenal. Those and daffodils, are right out about the same time, and it really wakes you up and says, hey, spring is coming. I think they started to bloom in mid-February this year, and just kept on blooming right on through the end of March. And then the daffodils sprung up probably beginning of March. So between the daffodils and the camellias, just really looked really nice. Miss my Tabor City home was very pleased with it. So one of the things I was going to do today is this particular bush here. We're going to trim that, and I'm going to trim that on camera just to show you kind of how I do it. Again, not too happy with this bush. We can see lots of new growth on it. And realistically, the leaves aren't terribly yellow, but the shape of it's terrible, and it's getting lanky, and it's just kind of all over the place, and there's nothing about it that looks organized. So we're going to get in there and we're going to see if we can just trim the top out of it and see if we can promote it to get a little bit fuller. And again, I'm making this video here about the end of April, and I will try to update this next year when the camellias are blooming to show you kind of what we achieved, whether or not we had less blooms, more blooms, if the bush got fuller, if it didn't get fuller, you know, how all that worked out. I have a feeling after looking at what's going on with the bushes I trimmed last fall, and again, you know, camellias, you're supposed to trim them right after they bloom. So, you know, they bloomed at the beginning of spring. You're supposed to trim them right at the end of spring. Even though we trimmed those bushes there in the fall, we still had a fair number of blooms on them, but they were the blooms that were left on the wood that had been there since last spring. So everything that was new didn't bloom. The theory with camellias is if you trim them now, right after they bloom, they have a full year's worth of growth to go through, and you'll get just an explosion of blooms next spring. So give me 1 second. I got to get a couple things together, and we will trim this bush for you. All right, so got our gloves on. I learned the deal with gloves by trimming some of these other bushes around here. And you reach in there to grab a branch you just cut, and what you didn't know was you've got a big bunch of thorns growing up inside there. You know, we get a lot of wild raspberry and things like that around here, so I don't even just take my chances anymore. I just go ahead and get them. So when I was trimming the bushes where I would just take off the outside, I was just using a pair of hand shears over in Britain. If you watch Monty Don and Gardeners, or what they call them, secateurs. But for the purpose of what we're doing today, we're using a pair of pruning shears. We're just going to go through here, and as I look at this bush, naturally to me it looks like there's a break right in here. So we're probably going to just level this bush right about chest high, and hopefully promote some growth on the underside of the bush, and see what we get out of it next spring. So take a real quick stab at this. Alright, so as you can see, maybe took a minute to do that, and basically what we've done is we've taken the level that we wanted. We took the top off the camellia. These are all the dead blooms from last year. or from this spring. And as you can see, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that every bit of growth we get next year is from pruning it. We already have some new growth on this bush. So what we want to see is, does the bush fill out any? Does it get more dense? Does it have more blooms? So, you know, again, a lot of videos out there showing, you know, various parts of camellias and what to do with them, but nothing said do A and the result you'll get is B. And I can't even really say that at this point, because as I've just said, it's a work in progress. So we're going to see how it turns out, and hopefully next spring we will we'll have something to be proud of. I'm already proud of them, but hopefully next spring we'll have some really nice full camellias, and will help the overall general health of the plants. So that would be nice. Anyways, my Tabor City home to you. Trim your camellia bushes here in the spring. It's the time to do it. Pretty much almost with every plant without exception, very few exceptions. You trim a plant after it blooms. As soon as the blooms die and fall off, you trim it. Gardenias, camellias, you know, all those kind of plants. So get out there and trim your bushes. It's spring. Let's get this stuff done. You'll be rewarded next spring, I promise you. All right? Guys, have a good day.